we are holding a Shvi of Yerushalmi Pesachim. The Shir should be a chus for all the people learning Yerushalmi and all those involved in disseminating Talmud Yerushalmi throughout the world. And it's chus for all of us who are learning it. There's Hashem, we carry on. It says in Torah you should roast the Cohen Pesach. The head of it, al Kara'ov al Kivroi. So now, what does this mean? So, okay, so this is Pesach. So, nun gimel on base, yeah. How do you roast the Cohen Pesach? So, you bring shapud shel rimon, sort of a stick of pomegranate wood. So, you basically send the stick through the mouth of the animal, all the way through the inners of the animal, until the area where the waist comes out. But you put the legs that have been cut from the knees and down, and the stomach, these sort of taken out of the animal to wash it. You put that inside the body of the animal. And after that, you hang the animal above the fire to roast it. So he says, you take the stomach out, you take the legs out, you put them inside the animal. But he says, come in bishul. It's like you're cooking the inners inside it, like in a pot. And no, you hang the knees and the stomach outside the animal. So so how do we roast the Cohen Pesach? For a start, why are we taking wood from the pomegranate tree? All other wood give out liquids. So when you're roasting with a sort of shvud, basically it's like the thing is cooking in some of these liquids. It doesn't get roasted. But however, the pomegranate one doesn't give out liquids. What are we talking about? If it's a moist one, I feel even a pomegranate one will give out. In aviation, I feel that none of the woods will if they're dry. And this is the way to say they're dry on the outside and moist on the inside. But Rimon, the pomegranate, it's dry out and in. Therefore you should take that. It's always dry, doesn't give out liquids, but don't take other branches. Finally, we learn to the price of Hashem B'Mudah. So you roast the Cohen Pesach, he says you should use a metal stick. They said, but surely it becomes very hot because of the fire. And then when it heats up the bit near the fire, then the rest of the metal heats up. And it will sort of heat up the meat. So some of the meat is getting heated from the heat of the spit, but not because of the fire. Because the fire is heating the spit, and they'll get heat from the spit. But the Torah says it should be Tzili Eish. Amalahem should be other said back. Kashem shall eat. Just like with wood, which is on the fire, the bit which is inside the animal, Eina Nisraf, doesn't really burn because the flesh is shielding it. Kasha Mateches. So an iron one, which is in the animal, and the part of it is covered from the spit, Eina Matiach. No, it's not going to because the flesh stops it. So the meat is not being cooked from its heat. But they said, you cannot compare wood to iron. When wood gets hot, part of it, the rest of it doesn't. But with metal, when part of it is hot, then it's all hot. Now, we did say you put the stick through the mouth of the animal till the bottom of it, and then whatever, you can hang the animal with that, where the mouth is maybe facing down. Some say that it's the other way around. So you put the stick through the animal, basically from the bottom up, until it reaches the mouth. According to this brisa, so in the beginning they do you do like we said in the Mishnah. You put the stick in the mouth of the animal, and then there's a bit sticking out from the mouth of the animal, and you can hang the animal where the mouth is below. But after that, you go and turn the spit round. You stick it from the bottom upwards. And then the bit behind it of the spit, which is sticking out from the back of the animal, you can hang the animal in the oven where the back is downwards. All this is basically you want it to roast from all sides. So you want to move the animal around in the hanging process so that the fire gets to it from all sides. We had an argument about roasting the inners and the knees and the stomach. You can put it inside the animal. According to Rikiva, he says no, it's time for bishul. You can't do that. It's because of the heat of the meat which is inside. So why is Rav Yossi Glili not bothered? What's this for Rav Yossi Glili? Ki yarech avad la Rav Yossi Glili. Does he compare the parts inside the body of the animal to like a thick thigh of the carbon? Like one side is open next to the fire, but it's like roasted completely. Or maybe he learns it because of Psukim. It says, you should first roast these portions when they are within the body. And even though they're not uncovered against the fire, they're not really tzli'esh. So is it the Psukim he's looking at, or what? Nothing going on. What's the difference between them? Saleh, if you roasted the knees or the stomach bigdi in the inside of a goat, shalchulim. If you're going to tell me that he allows you to roast these things inside the body because he compares it to like a thigh of the carbon, then you did it inside the, let's say, gedi of chulin, it's going to be kosher. Because it's like a yerech hava. But in temba kari darash, if he learns it from sukkim, well, it's got to be literally roshay al korav al kirvai. It's got to be on top. And then the situation where you roasted it inside a gedi of chulin is going to be possible. Now, another nafkamina will be chatach mimenu. You cut from the Cohen Pesach a piece of meat, and you roasted that piece inside the other animal. The animal. If you treat it like a thigh inside, right, like a knee, an extra fat knee or something, then it's kosher because we treat it as yerachava. But in Tema Kodesh, if you look at the psukim, so here, I'm afraid it's going to be possible. The Torah never said it's only on the karaim, like the stomach, you can put on top. It never said it about any other piece of meat. Now, another third difference between the two sides. Salayai behevel chol kedera. You roasted the Cohen Pesach with steam from a pot, say an empty pot, and it's heated over a heat, and you have steam coming out in. Maybe you're going to tell me the reason why he allows it is because it's like an extra thigh of the animal. Then if that's the case, the carbon which is hanging should be kosher, even though it's not focused against the fire. But in Tema Kodesh, if he's got specific pasuk, then pasuk will be pasuk because that Kosev doesn't apply. Now, according to one side of the suffix, we would allow a Cohen Pesach which is roasted in a pot. Like Tony, have we not learned Siliyesh? Like Sliya Kedera is going to be roasted by fire, not Sliya and not roasted in a pot. Shani la, you can explain it in the situation when a gab and gufa shogadera is relative to the sides. Basically, the roasting of the meat of the Cohen Pesach is done through the walls of the pot, so it's possible. But if it's hanging in the airspace of the pot, but it's not touching the sides, it's not roasted through the heat of the pot, but it's through the heat of the fire. Although the carbon is not open as far as the fire, it could be that the Cohen Pesach will still be kosher. Back to the subject we have, we're going to bring a riot, Hadara. Now the sugya we're going to prove that basically his din is because Kovadosh. He's got the psukim, Roisha Akra Aval Kirva, and that's why you should do the Cohen Pesach. Now, we got Machlokes Tanoim. It says you shall put the lechem upon him, right? You had the 12 loaves, and you had to put levina zaka, right? This sort of frankincense on it. Now, the pasuk says, "Menasata al hamareches." What does al hamareches mean? So you think it means you put the levina on top of the top 2 loaves. You have six towers of 2 loaves each. Put the levina on top, and that's what the Chachamim hold in Menachos. Abba Shah holds, no, you put the bezichim, the spoons, are on the table, next to the lechem upon it. Ala Mareches means next to the tower of the loaves. So I'll come waiting. Everyone agrees, but olav, the word olav, shuhu saboch, it can mean nearby. Like the olav, Mate Menashe. It means they'll camp nearby. They don't camp on top of, they camp nearby. Ma'apaligin, what are they arguing about al? The word al. That could mean next to. According to Chachamim, you have to take it literally. So Abba Shalom, he says, Al HaMareches, could mean Sabach HaMaracha, next to the pile. Rabbanan Amrin, they said, Al HaMareches means Al Gagosh HaMareches, right on the top of the pile. But Asiyad Abba Shol, the view of Abba Shol is like Rabbi Kiva, that he holds the word Al, Rosh al-Karav al-Kibbah can mean next to. So he says the Bnei Ma'im should be next to the carbon. But Rabbanan, and they hold Krib Yosef Glili. It holds the word al, it has to be Kipshuta, it means on top. You can't be next to. See, he holds Zersa Kosov, you should roast the Korban Pesach where the knees and the stomach are in the actual animal, even though they're not uncovered against the fire, they're not prophetically Eish. For the reason of Yosef Glili, we should roast these things when they're inside the animal. He learns Rosh al Krov al Kilba is Zersa you should do it even though it's not proper Sliesh. Now, after we brought Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shol, one brings a brisa that Rabbi also holds like Rabbi Shol, where they put the spoons. I'm talking about the lechem upon it. The Tosfos should put the lechem on 2 loaves, the 2 piles, each one has 6 loaves. Rabbi Yomer, Afilu Asan, even if the Cohen made the lechem upon him, Shnei Sedorim Shel Arba Esrei. Imagine he had 14 loaves instead of 12. He had 2 towers of 7. Imagine the top ones if they're not there. But Tachtoina is Kesheris and the bottom ones are kosher. So imagine the top ones if they're not there, then you've got 6 piles of 2. 2 piles of 6, right? Now if you're going to tell me Rabbi Yossi holds like Chachamim, that you put the levina on top of the bread, so in this situation, the top one, the 7th one, is not part of the marachas. That would be a chatzitza between the levina and the 6 which are in the tower. So you have to say Rabbi holds like Rabbi Shol. You don't put the levina on top of the bread, you put it next to it. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Rabbi Shol, they hold if you put it on the table, that is b'shittas Rameah b'shulchan, like his measures on the shulchan. Rameah held the length of the shulchan was 12 tvachim. So there was a space on the table for 2 tvachim space because marachas was each 5 tvachim each. So you had an extra 2 tvachim, and you could leave the levina in that place. But according to Yehuda, who held the length of the shulchan was 10 tvachim, then there was no room to put the levina on the table. So according to him, you have to put it on top of the bread. Now Rabbi Kiva, let's clearly argue how you roast the Kurayim and Bnei Ba'ayim. Let's see. So the Korban Pesach is called Toich Bar, right, from the inside and the outside. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Tava he says Mekulas. It's helmeted. It's wearing a hat. As to Rabbi Tava, the view of Rabbi Tava is like Rabbi Kiva. The holds that the insides were put next to the animal. They look like a copper hat. So they're called Mekulas. But Rabbi Shmuel is Rabbi Yossi Aglili. He's like the view of Rabbi Yossi Aglili, who holds they were inside the space of the animal. So they're called Toich Bar, the inside and outside. Some of it, the Kirva B'nei Ma'ayim are inside, and some of it, the rest of the body is outside. Another one brings a brisa which talks about the issue of eating gedima kulas, like this sort of roasted meat on Leil Pesach, nowadays. The Tali, Ezo gedima kulas, shol kulas, a roasted animal, rosh al krav al kirvai. So you roasted all the limbs together, like they roast the Korban Pesach. You can't eat it on Seder night, it looks like you're eating Korban Pesach b'chutz. If, however, shalek, if you cooked mixas, part of it, like bishel, or you cooked mixas, part of the goat, ein ze gedima kulas, then it's not gedima kulas, because some of it is ready cooked. It's not the same as a Korban Pesach. Machnisin gedima kulas b'leil yom tov rishon shel chag. You can bring it to a meal. The first night of Sukkot, the Yom Tov Achron Shel Pesach, and the last night of Pesach. We're not guys that you'll come and allow on first night of Pesach. And Machnesin Egam Mekulas, the Yom Tov Rishon Shel Pesach. You can also bring Egam Mekulas to the meal on the first night. A calf, right? It's a calf which is roasted. It's not kosher for Korban Pesach anyway. So when he eats it, it doesn't look like eating Korban Pesach b'chutz. Don't bring a goat, because that looks like you're eating for Korban Pesach outside. Tiny Harav, you said, Tudas Yerushalmi, Tudas, he was a Talmud Chacham. He was very chashuv in Rome. He was very high up in Roman circles. Heinig, as Anshe Romi, he got all the people of the Jewish people in Rome, they could eat the roasted goat on Leil Pesach. Were you not Tudas, something important, that we would put you in Cherem? Now, what did Tudas used to do? What did he used to do? He would send merchandise to the scholars to earn a living. Now they said, look, we should have put you in a cherem. Learning say so maybe aren't you bringing the rabbim l'dei achilas kodshim b'chutz? So you kodshim outside Yerushalmi. They're roasted like the Slias of Pesach, and people call it Pesach, and it's as if you're eating Kom Pesach outside, and people will think you're allowed to eat kodshim b'chutz. So you're Chaim nidoi. Who's going to maybe the rabbim l'dei achilas kodshim b'chutz? So nidoi. You know, we get someone to eat kodshim outside. He's nidoi. Rabbi Yosef Run. You know what? You don't tell your friend on Erev Pesach, take this money, go and buy meat for Pesach. Don't say that. We're worried. People will think you're giving money, you're being makdish money. Right? For a gedima kudas, for a goat, we're worried people think it's come Pesach. You know, you never actually said that it's for the Pesach. Definitely, if you actually say clearly, I want the money for Pesach, people will worry that you're thinking come Pesach. You're allowed to say on Erev Pesach, I'll take this money, but say kach li, buy him, buy with me for me. Basel it says meat to roast, without mentioning Pesach, and then no one will make any mistake. Yeah, it was for many years in Kedassia in London. The Pesach stickers, they never said kosher lo Pesach. It's always kosher al Pesach, for this reason. Yeah, it shouldn't appear as if this is a culture from Pesach. Ravimi asks, Garaf esatano, you've removed the coals in the oven, it's layai, and you've roasted the Kom Pesach in the empty oven. Is it kosher? No. I'm Rabbi Yemi. What's the question? Rabbi Yosef Lili, who learns you should roast it with the B'nai Maimah inside. And it could be we should learn from here that you can roast Kom Pesach maybe without fire at all. But however, Rabbi Akiva holds you don't roast the Pesach when the B'nai Maimah are inside the body. It's clear to Rabbi Yemi that there's no tzvara to allow roasting unless it's proper fire. It could be even Rabbi Akiva is a doubt. Maybe we can announce Leah in an oven where you've removed the coals, because the heat of the oven is still there. Marsha, I'll give you a parable. Gechalim la'avir hatano. The coals are inside the oven at the time when you roast the Kom Pesach. Nis le'alachatzi shah. The Kom Pesach roasting will take half an hour. However, gechalim la'avir ha'olam, when you roast Kom Pesach on coals not inside the oven, then nis le'alashah, it will take an hour to roast. So you see, the heat of the walls of the oven support the roasting. And even so, everyone agrees you're allowed to roast a Kom Pesach in an oven. And the reason is because the heat of the oven is like fire. Now, what's the difference if part of it was roasted because of the oven, or it was all roasted because of the oven? I mean, if you can do it in a way where some of it is done through the heat of the oven, so that heat is like fire. But then you should be able to roast the whole thing through the heat of the oven. Rosu. You know, an oven doesn't help coals to hasten the roasting. It joins together the heat of the fire. And that's the reason when the coals are in the actual oven, this half an hour roasting. When they're outside, then it takes an hour. Because the oven brings in all its hot air and it hurries to roast things. Alright, don't learn from here that the heat of the oven is considered like Aish. Okay. Carry on, yeah? Okay. Halacha base. Ein Sonet a Pesach, one should not roast Kom Pesach lev shapud. There's a metal stick. Lev askala, which is like a sort of metal netting. Metal mat of some kind. What do they call it there? Some sort of metal netting. Rav Tzadok, Master of Gamliel. We have a story of Gamliel. Sha'amar letevi avdin saves today long as a Pesach askala. Go and roast for us the Kom Pesach on the askala, which is like a netting, a metal netting. No garabachal. So if meat of the Kom Pesach touches a bit of earthenware, shalatano of the oven, yiklovers mugam. You have to peel away the meat from the place where it touches and burn it. Natav meroitvai, if some of the juice of the Kom Pesach falls ala cheres, on a hot earthenware vessel, v'chazar elav, and then then it fell to the meat. You have to remove the meat, that area that's got absorbed from this juice, and burn it. Not if some of the moisture of the Pesach fell on our side, that's on flour, we should take a fistful in that area from where the rights have got absorbed, and you should burn it. Okay, so we don't roast the Korban Pesach not on one of metal and not on a metal netting. So it says sli'esh, roasted by fire. Light sli, not roasting that's done through shapud, through metal. Light sli, and not roasting that's done through walls of a kedera of a pot. Light sli, and not roasting that's done through color, right? The heat of the netting. Light sli, and not
a
grill, yeah. Light sli, and not sli that's done through heat of any other metal vessel. Light sli, or not roasting that's done from cold of anything else as opposed to fire. Okay. Now we're going to ask on this drasha from a brisa. The brisa talks about the tsaras of a wound, michva, tsaras, neged tsaras, which comes because of a heat element. Now, what stage of the heat are we talking about, tsaras? Now, it says in the Torah with tsaras, and michva, ibasa, it says a person who has on his skin michvas eish. Yeah? Yachad, I might think, tsaras applies even if it's moredas, so it's like things are coming out of it. It's not healed at all when the nega appears. Tabaloma, that's why it says, V'haisa mechias hamichba, it says B'hers levana. So this then applies when this burn, this kavir, like it healed. On the other hand, in mechias hamechba, however, if it's talking about a case where it's healed, Yachal, I might think that the Zin Tsaras doesn't apply out Shetas Sadekes until it heals completely and completely covered over with the crust. Tabaloma, as it says, Mechvas Eish. It's got to be appearing still as wounded and not healed yet. Okay, so how do we understand this? Chaysa v'loi chaysa. It's like a wound which got healed a bit, but not completely. V'cheinu Omer also says Lamaton. It says later on, Sarebes Mamechvari. And the Lashon Sarebes is like the skin which is dry. It is the laws of a nega from a wound, from a heat wound. And not until it creates a sort of crust, which is still is like very, very dry. Now, only it's all very well. You have mechvas eish elamisha nechva ba'ur. It got burned through fire. Nechva b'gacheles. Why it was cold? Remetz or hot ash. The sira seach, a hot pot. The gas is through seach. What's this? Some other Egyptian thing. Gypsum. Chashu machmas ha'esh, or anything with heat is coming from the fire, like water heated through fire. Me'nayin, how do I know the din saras applies? Talmud Lamed says mechba, mechba is twice. Riba is the extra word, like what to include things coming when the heat comes from the fire. Now the Torah is mentioned with saras, something heated in fire is like the fire itself. Now it sounds like we can learn this also for other dinei Torah. V'chayu amahachid. We come Pesach. He says, look, roasted in fire means you need proper fire. You don't include anything else. Rav Elazar, Tamam, we come Pesach, sli'esh, roasted in fire. Kiyim sli'esh, it says again, roasted in fire. Shana lavakasul eikuv, tell you it's essential. But Amhacha with Saras, we don't have that. Second time it says mechva, and it says, Vahaisa mechias ha-mechva. It doesn't say mechvas eish. This data applies to any kuvia, any wound, whether it's caused through fire or from anything where the heat came from fire, either from fire itself or coming from indirectly from fire. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Avuma. Tamam, well, that's another answer. With Kam Pesach it says Chukah, right? And it says Torah. So telling you the roasted carbon is essential. Ma'akev, hacha, with tzaras, the wound. Ma'izlav, we don't have any psukim to say it's essential. There's no chukah or Torah. So if the kavir is done just through something where the heat comes from the fire, then it's like tzaras hamichva. Okay. And it says in the Mishnah, Gamliel told his servants to roast a korban pesach on the azkara. Okay. Let's let Gamliel, does Gamliel not agree of sli'esh? You must roast it on proper fire, not something where the heat comes from fire. So the Gemara answers Islay. He does hold of that Kom Pesach b'Mitzrayim. Well, there you had included Sli Eish. So, it had to be from fire. But Ein Pesach HaDoros, Kom Pesach throughout history, doesn't have the meals of Sli Eish. That doesn't have to come from fire. Rezugun. From Gamliel, Abba told us Eish Ka'Eish. He treated things coming from fire like fire. So he allowed you to roast on this Askala, whatever it is. Whereas Rabbana Lav didn't tell us Eish Ka'Eish. They didn't allow you to treat other things like fire. So they forbade putting on an Askala. Now, what did Rabbi Gamliel do? Now, Rabbi Gamliel Cholok al Chachamim. Did he argue? Can it be that he argued on Chachamim Kom Pesach Ba'isa Halacha K'Yetzavon, and he does Halacha L'Maisa according to his own view? An individual is not allowed to do Halacha like his opinion, when there's other people in masses who argue. It's a very good question. I'm afraid we have no answer. Now it says we Kom Pesach, don't eat it raw, or Voshel Mevoshel B'Mayim, yeah? Now, Voshel Mevoshel B'Mayim, it says Kiyim Sli Eish. Why is the Torah telling you? You should have just said, don't eat it, except eat it roasted. So why you have to add the word dry, don't eat it raw? If he just said that, I didn't say raw, no. I would have thought, if you heated it a bit, in a way it's not fully roasted, then Musa is permitted. That's why I needed to say no, that you should roast the Kom Pesach completely. Now, the Gemara gives an example why we have to say the word of Vashal and Mavushal. If you cook the Kom Pesach with overcooking, and after that slowly you roast it, it'll be permitted. And so, that's why you have to say a Vashal to forbid the Kom Pesach was cooked, even if it's roasted afterwards. Maybe if it said maybe I would have thought. If first you cook the Kom Pesach a little bit of cooking, and after that you roasted it, maybe it'll be permitted. That's why the Torah has to say mevushal, to exclude even if it's cooked a bit, and even if it's roasted later on. And the Tzarachu, that's why the Pasuk even says Shema Na, Tzarachu Shema Bashal. That's why we need all three of them. Okay. A raw piece of meat. On the 14th of Nisan. Is today someone say Chaim you're liable? Is today Vato? No. Don't eat it raw. Whenever. One says you're part of when you have a mitzvah to eat roast, then don't eat it raw. Then you're mitzvah b'mal earlier on, you don't have an obligation to eat roasted. Therefore, you don't have the issur of don't eat it raw. If you broke a Kom Pesach before sunset on the 14th, isn't it only some say you're Chaim? Isn't it only part of your part? You don't break a bone. This become Okan, day and night. The one who says you are Potul, and it says in one house you eat, don't break a bone. So we put the mitzvah eating Kom Pesach to the issur of breaking a bone. At the time when you're not commanded, mitzvah of eating Kom Pesach roasted, which is before Yom Tov comes in, then you're not commanded of not breaking a bone. When you have the problem that you must eat roasted, which is when it gets dark, then you're commanded, you mustn't break a bone. Now, if meat touches a wall of an oven, you have to peel away that area. If the stew of the oven, it springs back and splashes back, so the meat, you've got to take that area that's got absorbed in. Now we distinguish between various cases. If the Pesach itself, Naga B'chasa, should try to touch the oven, Psula Gufu, there's a psula of part of the meat which touches that area, which is like roasted, not because of the fire, the Nisraf Miyad is burned straight away like kachim, which is possible. Whereas Natav Miroitzva Ala Cheres, if some of the stew, the juice, fell onto an earthenware vessel, Pasal Mashir, then it's like a psul in the Mashir. That means it's not possible in its own right, it's possible because of something else. The meat itself is kosher, but the stew has got absorbed psul. So you can't burn it straight away. You can't burn kodshim, which is kosher permits, of course, they're right. Therefore, ta'ud surah. Therefore, the meat needs to have a change of shape. You leave it before you burn it. You leave it till the next day, and then it'll be possible because of noisa, and you'll be allowed to burn it. That's if some of the stew falls on the flour. You should take a fistful of that area and burn it. This din that with the flour is beresachas, if it's boiling hot, it burns the roitzev of the Chaim Pesach which falls in. Now if it puzzles that stew, it's roasted not because of the fire. But sainenes, with flour which is cold, shari, the stew is permitted. We're not worried the stew will heat up the flour, that it will go and roast it again. The Torah said that he shouldn't roast others. The Chaim Pesach falls into things which are closed and might roast them. We don't have to worry, maybe we'll go and roast them again. The Torah said basically, who was this? The Chaim Pesach will not be roasted because of other things which are hot. Okay, I think we'll stop here on my side. Okay.